That's what NASA and all these space agencies, they're basically preparing for, because people say, why would they lie? Why would they do this and that? These are the relatives of the ancients who had children with the bipedal Fantazoids, or aliens, or space travelers, or Anunnaki, or angels, or demons, or vampires, or Vulcans, or whatever you want to call them, right? They had children with them. So what they do is they pass along this secret of how to survive and how to get out, if that's the option that they have, if they have that option. And that depends, I believe, on, like, you know, perhaps the purity of their blood or their psychic abilities or something like that. Usually there's a test, a psychic test, when you enter into the heavens, or you go into space, or whatever people want to call it. And I'm sorry, I totally just forgot what we were talking about.
We're talking about the vortex and
that's right,
launching themselves into this vortex.
Yes. So as NASA and our people, okay, our space travelers, our future bipedal Fantazoids, basically, as we launch ourselves up to leave, those people who have been preparing for a long time for that moment, they are going to leave. The other ones are going to come in. This is the moment where you can cross over. This is the moment where you can travel through the black hole sun, the wormhole, the Einstein-Rosen bridge, the circuits of time. It's usually depicted in the movies as like a subway car, a sub train, or, you know, whatever, to get you from one realm to another, typically our sister world across from us, basically. But yeah, they're going to come in. That's going to be the moment in time. Remember, I said time is cyclical, right? So that's going to be the moment in time when the sons of God fall down from the sky. They come into our world. Our people, our Anunnaki, our scientists, or whatever you want to call them, they're going to leave. They're going to be leaving on a jet plane. We're going to look up and see War of the Worlds. We're going to say, oh, they're fighting the aliens. You know, there's a lot of people are going to think that it's just an alien invasion. So all the rockets being shot up are to attack them, when they're really escape pods to get out of here, basically. The sun goes out. The sky gets dark, the stars essentially start to kind of disappear, and we have blackness for a period of time. That has a lot to do with the plasma on the outside, which I'll draw a quick diagram here in a second. But as soon as the lights go out, that's whenever we're getting into the neutral point of the polarity shift. When we go into the neutral point of the polarity shift, what's commonly known as gravity, or the electromagnetic force, or whatever is keeping us to the ground, essentially. There's various factors that play into that. It hits neutral, and our world goes into a state of 0G. Basically, everything starts to float. Whatever is not attached to the earth or inside of the earth, which is why a lot of the elite of the world try to build their bunkers underground, but in reality they're actually going down into the inner earth. I don't know if they're going to build bunkers because there's going to be worldwide earthquakes and they can easily, you know, crush the bunkers. I think they're going into the inner earth, the ones that really plan on surviving. But essentially everything floats, and there's going to be a floating phenomenon for a short amount of time while we hit that zero gravity neutral point during the shift. And when that happens, there is an electromagnetic barrier. I might need to get into the diagram here for just a second, but above our world, there is an electromagnetic barrier. Academics refers to it sort of as the Van Allen belts, right? And academia has actually agreed and recently discovered that there are these plasma tubes that run around our world, right? And this is regardless of people's cosmology, because I know various people are starting to, you know, see our cosmology in different ways and where we live and stuff like that. This works with pretty much all of them, okay? But there are these plasma tubes that go around our world. Of course, we have the magnetosphere and the plasmasphere, obviously, themselves. The plasma is within what they call that plasmasphere and magnetosphere area, and it's wrapping around our world. It's conforming. The reason it doesn't come into our world is because our world has this electromagnetic barrier, specifically a magnetic field or a shield around it that keeps the plasma from coming in, because plasma is repelled by a magnetic force. So the plasma is being kept out literally by a force field around our world. When that force field hits the neutral point, when our world hits the neutral point polarity-wise, that force field goes away for a time. And when that force field goes away, that's when we essentially experience 0G. And that's whenever the world depressurizes and the sky opens up above the North Pole. And that's going to get into a lot more stuff, and you can stop me at any time. Okay, cool. Okay. So let me just go bring up my camera 2 here, and I'm going to draw a little diagram. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this is sort of a tentative rough draft diagram of one possible way that our world looks here, okay? You have to imagine this right here is, I drew it 2-dimensional because there's a hole in the middle. This would be like the North Pole. Remember Admiral Byrd went across to the North Pole, then he went inside the Earth at the North Pole. So this would be like the North Pole where this opening is right here. But you have to imagine it goes all the way around. So it'd be like a little donut shape if you want. Not donut, but you know, there's a hole in the middle basically.
Okay.
Okay. So this dotted line over here, this is the natural magnetic field that goes around this particular shaped object, which is essentially our world here. Now, the plasma is coming down. The plasma will reverse directions during each one of these polarity shifts. Right now, it's coming downward towards us from above. So it looks like this. Now, when the plasma hits that magnetic barrier, it conforms to the shape of this is called the confinement dome because it confines everything inside of it, basically. But it conforms to the shape of this magnetic force field wrapping around the top of our world here. Now, the byproduct of that plasma is H2O and nitrous oxide. The H2O, which is water, freezes instantly. And that gives us our sky, aka the firmament, the dome above us, what the ancients used to refer to as the sky. And remember, you don't have to have this particular exact cosmology. You can work this into whatever cosmology you already have. But the plasma is wrapped around our world, repelled by the force field, and then the byproduct is water, which freezes into basically our sky, giving us a lens. Now, I do want to explain the sun real quick. The plasma is physical, right? But it carries light within it. So as it goes down and it hits this huge lens that it has created, which is pure water, basically, the light continues on. The plasma hits it and wraps around because it's physical, but the light from the plasma continues on through this lens to a focal point. And then it redistributes the light down to the land. I didn't draw any ocean or anything, but you can imagine, you know, there's ocean at the bottoms of the mountains there. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So this is sunlight essentially coming in, hitting the focal point. That's the sun, redistributing it down onto the land there. Whenever we hit that neutral point, okay, what happens is the plasma, it's in flux. As it's spinning around, everything fluxes. This spiral is in flux. And when it gets closer to the polarity shift or the reset, as we call it, right, it's going to be its strongest, like I was talking about with the light bulb. So it's actually going to get bigger and bigger. And when it gets its biggest, it's not going to be able to create a focal point whatsoever. Therefore, the sun disappears or the sun goes away. And that's where Christmas comes into play. That's why we celebrate Christmas. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my my video here. That's why the ancients celebrated Christmas, because of the, or not just Christmas, but all of the winter solstice festivals. They literally knew that there was a chance that the sun would not come back. It's not that they were heathen and they were just stupid and they were ignorant and they just thought the sun was going to disappear for no good reason whatsoever. They knew the sun would eventually, one of those days around the solstice, dip down and not come back, because there would not be a focal point for approximately 3 days during this shift. Biblically speaking, that would be the 3 days of darkness of Moses's 10 plagues, right, in Egypt. So let me go back to the depressurization real quick. Okay, now here's what happens. Okay, so during the neutral point, this plasma, I'm going to go ahead and erase the plasma that's there right now. The plasma goes into flux and it goes everywhere. It's all over the place, okay? It's not going in any direction whatsoever. And then this magnetic field that was once there disappears, okay? This magnetic field is, at this point in time right now, not only keeping the plasma out, but it's diamagnetic. Some of the material in our atmosphere is diamagnetic. Actually, all of it is, except for oxygen, I believe. It's keeping our world pressurized. So all of the stuff in our atmosphere, all of the elements and, chemicals and gases and everything, it's actually being kept in by this same barrier. Once that electromagnetic force field goes away during the neutral point, the world depressurizes. All this pressure goes up against the sky, or the ice dome basically, and it bursts right at the middle. And remember, this is during zero gravity too. So everything down here that's not tied down or in the earth is already floating. Oh, and I just drew like the caverns of the inner earth down here. That's just, well, you can't really see it that well, can you? That light shoots up into the sky. It fills up. It recreates the dome and whatnot. And our world is full of electromagnetic energy. So all of our electronics and basically the whole Pinocchio story, Toy Story, all of these things where inanimate objects, robots and whatnot, that didn't used to have a soul, now all of a sudden are plasma possessed. The plasma goes in, it seeks out a body, it seeks out something to live inside of. Not only is it going to go into our electronics, and all of our world's electronics basically turn on and become sentient to whatever degree they can, right? They obviously are going to be limited by whatever bodies they have. But the plasma will go into the dead, the recently dead specifically, that still have, you know, some sort of brain function, bringing the dead to life. Zombie apocalypse is a part of the plasma apocalypse. Pet Cemetery is a part of the plasma apocalypse. Jason Voorhees is a part of the plasma apocalypse. In one of the Jason movies, that's how he literally comes to life. And I knew it before I even saw it, but like his grave gets struck by lightning, which infuses him with a new soul, which is his plasma. He gets up and he's plasma possessed. He's a rider on a storm. He's the one who's on the road. He's the killer on the road. Remember the Doors? There's a killer on the road.
On the storm. Oh yeah.
That's the bipedal Fantazoids and the plasma that are the riders on the storm, not a storm, the worldwide tempest. And so here's what happens to people when they become plasma possessed. When that plasma docks with us, even if it doesn't dock, naturally, you're going to see this. This is one of the signs that lead up to the end. All energy is going to become magnified, supercharged up. So in a human being, what that means, if you're a bad person, you're going to become a real bad person. If you're a good person, you're going to become a real good person. It's going to amplify whatever electromagnetic signature is already there. That's why I talked about, if you want to survive and all that, it's really good for you to change your aura, because I think that the plasma can basically read your aura because it's electromagnetic, and it's just going to go after certain colors of aura and try to get those people basically for the data harvest. The gods, the angels, the bipedal Fractal Verse travelers, they'll come down, and there will be factions between us survivors, aka the new superheroes or local gods of the world. Remember, we'll have the super strength, right? Those born into that world, they won't have super strength, right? So there will be these factions between us and them, and how we'll side with some of them, and we won't side with some of them. We are the Vanir. We are the beautiful ones. In like Norse mythology, they see us as being beautiful. We know this because in the Bible, Genesis chapter 6, it says that the sons of God, aka bipedal Fractal Verse travelers, came down here and saw that we, the daughters of men, were beautiful. And so what they did, because they're all white, they're very pale and white colored because they come from white space, they started to decorate themselves to look more like us. This gives us killer clowns from outer space. Okay, that's literally why Pennywise is a clown, why we're scared of clowns. All that clown symbolism comes from that. They were trying to look more like us because they found us to be beautiful. Then they taught us how to do that to ourselves. We tried to look more like them by putting on our makeup, which is really interesting. But there'll be battles between the Azir, those from the sky, and the Vanir, the beautiful ones, us, as you know, factions develop and the whole cycle starts over. And this particular information is remembered by some and kept within certain circles and certain families, passed on, either secretly by certain societies that are interested in their families. And they may have rules, you know, I'm not siding with anyone. They might have certain rules, or openly by us truth seekers who are not believed. Wigging out. But remember how there's the hollow inner earth, right? This portion right here, this middle portion is all hollow, right? So what happens when that light reverses is the light inside the earth, just like if when we research the hollow earth theory, there's always this inner earth sun. There's always some sort of inner earth light source, right? And that's the plasma. The plasma reverses course, goes up through the center of our world, shoots up through the sky and up to the dome, or up to the sky itself, or the atmosphere, whatever people like to see it as. And it creates this light of the world. This is the light of the world. This is the sign that will be given that the plasma apocalypse is over, that the plasma, the red plasma that comes down, this is most likely going to be like a baby blue whitish beam. This is also Project Blue Beam. Man, I'm sorry about the camera, man. I don't know why it's doing that. It opens up in the sky. The world depressurizes because we live in a pressurized system, a contained pressurized system in this world. It depressurizes. There's a few things that happen at this moment. When it depressurizes, if you look up rapid depressurization, like on an airplane cabin, right? Have you ever seen that? It makes fog. It makes instant mist in the air everywhere. This is the reason in all of the scary movies why they always add an element of fog, typically mixed in with some sort of a red light because there's going to be a red sky. But the fog it's in our subconscious to be sort of afraid of fog because of this element. This is in our collective subconscious. The whole Earth will experience a massive worldwide fog. Depending on how close to the North Pole you are, it could be snow. It could just instantly freeze the atmosphere into like little flakes, like on the Upside Down in Stranger Things. You know, like just little, it looks like ash in the air or something.
Yeah.
That's just snow. That's all that is. It just instantly depressurized the world. Or you have Stephen King's, what was the one? The Mist, right? And the Mist actually showed the truth of the plasma apocalypse with the Fantazoids walking around in the mist itself, which is pretty cool. So what happens when the world depressurizes and that hole opens up, a giant hole in our sky? Remember, it's going to be black because the sun is gone, right? 3 days of darkness. And not just darkness, but like it says in I think it says it in the Quran. It definitely says it in the Book of Mormon. It talks about darkness you can feel, or thick darkness. And that's because of that fog or that mist that's around people. They probably don't even realize that they're in the fog or mist because it's so dark, which is another reason why we have to light our candles, like your Christmas candles, your Hanukkah candles, your whatever end of the year candles people keep lit, the Yule log. They do that for that reason. They're preparing for the lights to go out, and they know they need to keep the fire going at least until the new year comes, because it's basically a 1 week to 12-day long event that happens. But when that hole opens up in the sky, the only lights, for the most part, we'll be able to see are going to be coming from the sky. And if it's a hole opening up and all that plasma is swirling around behind it, what it may look like to many people, first of all, it's going to become a stargate, a literal gate up there where the stars are that takes us out into quote unquote space, into the other realms where there are other places where people live like us, other alternate Earths, basically. That hole in the sky is going to be seen as many, many different things. First and foremost, that is the all-seeing eye up there in the sky. That's the evil eye. That's the eye of Ra. That's the portal that you see in basically every single Avengers movie or any kind of Marvel movie where, you know, there's a portal that opens up in the sky and all the aliens come in through it. That's what CERN's been working on. It's the portal that opens up, but it looks like, because it's circular to many of us who have been brought up in modern academics, it looks like it would be a planet that all of a sudden appeared out of nowhere and it's about to crash into us. That opening in the sky is also the place of the crossing, right? Which is sort of what Nibiru kind of implies. It's the place where those from above come down and cross over into our world. It's a sky portal basically that opens up. So when you open up that hole in the sky and you go out there, it's light, it's bright. I mean, we all know heaven is always portrayed as a bright white place, you know, and everybody knows heaven's up. So when we look up, remember how I showed you like that little covering over our world? That's keeping our world dark. That's keeping our world black, which is why in Black Hole Sun, he sings those lyrics, beneath the black, the sky looks dead. It does look dead. That's not what space looks like. Space is bright and full of life and colors and vibrant, like probably an opalescent, pearlescent color, if I were, you know, my best guess. But basically, yeah, they're going to leave. They're going to leave. The other creatures are going to come in. Now, the depressurization of our world is going to immediately create or slowly, I should say, create a world tempest, because the atmosphere itself is going to start getting sucked up and out of that particular blowhole at the top of our world. Okay. Remember in Spaceballs, whenever they went to Druidia and they had the big vacuum suck and they put the vacuum on planet Druidia and they sucked out all the air, right? And they're all suck, and they sucked out all the atmosphere. And some of the people down there on Druidia started to kind of pass out and whatnot. That is showing us truth in the movies, where our atmosphere is going to get sucked up. It's going to be a lot harder to breathe. There'll still be enough to breathe, but it's going to be difficult. And plus, people are going to be hyperventilating. They're going to be paranoid. A lot of people are probably just going to pass out, honestly. But that's going to create the worldwide tempest, which many ancient writings refer to from time to time. In the Book of Mormon, there's a little sub book in there called Nephi. It's really interesting. I like to read all the religious, literature and whatnot, but they have this story of when Jesus was crucified, which is sort of the story of the last plasma apocalypse. They talked about this tempest that came across even in the Americas, and this mighty wind picked a person up, and whither they went, no one knew, just that the wind had taken them or whatever. Like, they basically get sucked up because the wind, there's zero gravity. The just slightest breeze is going to start moving people in an upward direction. It's going to create basically an upside down vortex, taking things from this world up and out of this world. And that's the reason why in, well, for example, Alice in Wonderland, she has to go through the rabbit hole. The rabbit hole is the Einstein-Rosen bridge on the other side of Nibiru, or the opening, or the black hole sun. But the vortex that takes you to this other wonderland or whatnot, that's why, what was that movie where she had the ruby slippers? I totally forgot the name.
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, so in the Wizard of Oz, that's why she has to go through this tornado, aka the twister or the vortex. That symbolizes the world tempest, where the winds blow around. That's also the reason why there's a lot of esoteric symbolism in like the new Godzilla movies. Godzilla, which I can talk about a little bit later because he's a huge part of the plasma apocalypse, believe it or not, symbolically speaking. Godzilla fights King Ghidorah. King Ghidorah represents the plasma tentacles that then come into our world because there's no electromagnetic barrier or force field keeping them out. It comes into our world when the world depressurizes, and it starts to ground itself. And it's going to look like Cthulhu's tentacles coming down from the sky. The Kraken has awakened. All the various tentacle kind of fingers of God symbolism, pillars of fire symbolism, all of that stuff is the plasma entering into our world. And, the ancient gods awakening to destroy the world and also at the same time recreate it. But yeah, the tempest starts to blow around. The plasma comes in. Those things that are not tied down, they get sucked up. Now, when the plasma comes in, there's various intensities. Okay, there's going to be the huge trunks of plasma that are like, probably the size of small cities and whatnot, touching down. They're going to go for all the major cities, especially the places that have skyscrapers and all the things that shoot way up into the air. And that's why on Independence Day, all the alien craft with those blue beams, they go over those major cities, not because they're strategically trying to take out the biggest populations, but because they have the easiest, closest targets, which are those huge skyscrapers all around the world. The plasma begins to terraform our world. Now, at the same time, what helps the terraformation of our world with the plasma is that the world is going to start growing. It's going to experience worldwide earthquakes because the world literally is going to start to grow. This is the time in which the world grows. So that's reflected down here on our microcosm as worldwide earthquakes, basically. When the world starts to shake, we all know, even in academics, they teach that there is more water under the crust of the earth than there is on the oceans on the surface. That water in our crust starts to come to the surface, and it creates what's called liquefaction, basically quicksand, where all the heavy things on top, including, continents, cities or whatnot, they all start to sink down if they're not on bedrock. If you're on bedrock, you're probably okay. You're probably safe. But the world becomes very muddy, inundated with mud all over the place. Now, because the world is so muddy and that plasma comes to touch down, it's literally going to attract the mud up into the air and petrify it, giving us mountain ranges and valleys and things like that. So the plasma really does terraform the world. It petrifies a lot of parts of it. And this is also Medusa symbolism. So how Medusa is usually portrayed as just her head in the ancient images, and there's the snakes all the way around. The head is the black hole sun. It's just the circular face of Medusa. And then the plasma spirals, or the plasma tentacles, as I call them, they come out from all sides, and that's Medusa's hair, which has the ability to petrify because it's highly charged plasma coming down straight from space, basically. The plasma is also going to come into our world, inundating our world with basically recharging our world with electromagnetic energy. It's going to take on various shapes. St. Elmo's fire, ball lightning, which I believe, this might be kind of funny, but you know, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, I think that actually might be a little bit of truth in there. These red balls, you know, moving around trying to get the people. This is a cleansing process. Okay, so this is my opinion on this, but according to all of my research and the religious scriptures that I've read and the ancient manuscripts I've read, basically this reset is always a type of cleansing process and an exchange of data, or a data harvest, which I'll get into as well. But the plasma comes in, it's going to take all sorts of shapes and forms, and would not surprise me because I believe that the plasma is sentient, because I think I like to equate plasma with spirit, basically. So like, you know, in Ghostbusters, the ghosts, they were ectoplasm, right? They always had ectoplasm. That's just plasma outside of the body. That's what ectoplasm means, right? Endoplasm is our spirit. That's what's on the inside. It's charging us and keeping us going, right? And then we take on these shells called bodies, and these are our vessels that we drive around and whatnot. Well, that plasma comes in. Basically, you've got Ghostbusters 2 now happening all around the world, where there's going to be manifestations of quote unquote ghosts all over the place, a lot of paranormal activity happening. The electronics of the world are going to go haywire and nuts. What else was I going to go through here? Did you have any questions about that stuff so far?
No, but I do want to talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
You brought up the plasma possibly being sentient, and I wouldn't be surprised one bit if it has a specific consciousness. And then when you said the cleansing, well, what if your DNA has a specific link to that plasma, and it can either turn you on or turn you off?
Right. I totally agree. And that's why I think that it's really important. Like, I'm just going to put this out there. This is my hippie new age side of me, but honestly, it's the core part of me. I believe it is of the utmost importance to, you know, for those, especially for those people out there that are trying to survive this cyclical event, before we go into all this external type things, inside, change the aura, change the vibrational frequency, because the plasma is going to come in and essentially look for the old energy signature to get rid of it, or to what I call plasma possess it. This is where the smaller strands of plasma come in. They are attracted to electricity or electromagnetics, which we are, our brain being our central processing unit. Now, this is, like I said, a data harvest, right? So all of our data is stored in our brains, basically, all of our experiences, and possibly our spirit memory that our plasma carries, or our spirit carries. So that plasma comes in, it wants to dock with the head, with the brain specifically, but it's plasma. So it doesn't like go through the body, right? So it needs to go through the eyes. The eyes are the window to the soul. This is why in all of these movies, when you see like the face huggers, that these creatures that are always trying to attach to the face, or even in Stranger Things, the Demogorgon on, have you seen the 3rd season? I don't want to ruin it. Okay. Well, there's the whole face hugging thing going on in that too. Alien, obviously, Doctor Who's got these dream crabs or whatnot, but this is the plasma that tries to dock through the eyes to basically reboot the brain by uploading the information out there, up into quote unquote space to its source. Okay. So that gets into, that gets into the fractal verse and, you know, the external, but I want to keep it in our world for just a second longer. So the plasma comes in, and its mission is to cleanse the world and to collect information, basically to collect experience, to send it somewhere so that it can do something with that. But you were right. NASA leaves, the Fantazoids come in. Okay, so the Fantazoids are out there. They come in various types, just like how we have different animal, class, phylum, family, genus, species, and all of that here in our world. They have that up there or out there in what I call the macrocosm as well. Now, where we live now in our reality, this is our mesocosm. This is our normal. If we go upward and outward into quote unquote space, we enter into the macrocosm where everything is way bigger. In this world, because of the pressure, remember we live in a pressurized system, a contained, closed, pressurized system. That pressure has shrunk us down over time, as well as oxygen being depleted within this closed system, right? So we're just getting smaller and smaller and smaller since the last plasma apocalypse. So here's what happens. The world depressurizes, right? And it relieves all that pressure. Actually, let me back up just a half a step. Let me get back to the Fantazoids. Out there, everything is bigger. It's more gigantic, okay? Out there are creatures that more closely resemble our sea creatures than they do our land creatures. I call them the Fantazoids. There's different types. There's friendlies, neutrals, and malevolent Fantazoids out there. There's different levels of, what they look like. You have the bipedals, which we would call aliens, or the gods, or the angels, or the shining ones. And they're shining and shimmering because they are from the whiteness of space out there. They have a shine and a shimmer to them, like an opalescent, pearlescent, almost a slimy look. Almost all the Fantazoids do. And that's why a lot of our sea creatures have that same sort of slimy look to them, because many of those sea creatures like octopi and crabs and lobster, those are most likely the ancient remnants of the old Fantazoids who found refuge in the deep waters, and they weren't exterminated, because we went on a mission to exterminate these giant beasts of old that came down. And that's the reason why you have the knights of old wearing all that heavy, bulky armor that no one in their right mind would fight another human being with. Like when there's arrows and there's ninjas and swords and all kinds of other easier ways, they put on metal because the Fantazoids most likely have an electric ability to them, like they could shock people like a lot of our sea creatures can. And so they put on this huge heavy metal armor because the Fantazoids typically, especially the monster class, has an exoskeleton. So it's basically going to look like the monster forms, not the alien forms, but the monster forms will probably look to us like gigantic bugs or gigantic sea creatures coming into our world. And they're going to fall down in here not knowing where they are. They're going to be gigantic in comparison to us because they live in where they live is different conditions than where we live. We live in the world where you put something inside of it and it shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. It gets smaller and smaller. That's Mary Poppins' bag. That's Hermione Granger's bag. That's Felix the cat's bag. That's where you put something in like the mushroom, because our world, according to that diagram I drew, is sort of mushroom shaped. One side, which is the inside, will make you grow smaller. One side, which is the outside, will make you grow larger, like Alice in Wonderland, right? So those fractal verse travelers, those Fantazoids, they come into our world. They're the great monsters of old. It's also biblical in, like, for example, Revelation, where they have the locusts, that everyone who's read that knows that they're not actually locusts. There's some sort of foreign alien beings that, that come into our world, and they're on this mission to go and bite or scratch or, torment mankind for a certain amount of time. Now, they're not going to be around for a long time, the Fantazoids, okay? Not the real big ones. Like I said, we're going to go exterminate them, but on top of that, they're in a brand new environment. They're going to have to try to forage for food, find stuff in a world that's just been obliterated by this reset, mud everywhere, vegetation's hard to find. So the Fantazoids aren't going to be around for a long time, but that is a huge part of it. And the bipedal Fantazoids, those are those shimmering ones. Those are the shining ones, the angels, the demons, whatever people call those different classes of bipedal fractal verse travelers. And that's why I call it the fractal verse, because it loops in on itself. If we go up into the macrocosm, it only seems like things are getting bigger, when in reality, we're just infinitely looping as we continue on. We could also go downward into the microscopic or the microcosm. And we could see, for example, the tardigrade, right? The world's smallest animal down there on the microcosm. And yet in our media and our movies and stuff like that, we've started seeing a lot of associations with tardigrades and space for some odd reason. Like, why do we like to associate tardigrades and space? Star Trek even had a giant tardigrade in one of its newer episodes. I don't know if you've seen Star Trek. Gravity will be restored. There will be a weak electromagnetic force to begin with. That force is going to reinstitute that shield that goes around our world. It's basically Captain America's shield. That shield that goes around our world, that magnetic force field, it's going to come back up, but it's going to be weak to begin with, and it's going to be bigger because it conforms to the shape of the world. And like I said, the world just grew. So it's going to be bigger now, that electromagnetic force field. But here's what happens. Remember how I drew in that picture that the plasma comes down from above, and then we hit the neutral point and it goes haywire, it goes all over the place. Then after that, the plasma goes up. The electromagnetic flow goes upwards. So the light that comes from that plasma will no longer come downward at us in a focal point called the sun. It will wrap around the entire sky, illuminating the entire sky, shooting upwards around us. And biblically, like in the book of Revelation, John talks about how he was given, a view of the world after the apocalypse, basically after Jesus comes back and all the angels come down, etc. He says, and I looked, behold, the oceans were no more, or the sea was no more. That's because the seawater is going to be subject to zero gravity. It's going to make waves that are not going to stop. They're just going to crest and crest and crest, keep going up like in Interstellar, right? It's just going to keep on going up and up and up. And then eventually that water, a lot of it's going to get sucked up and out of the opening at the top of the world. Not everything will get sucked up though. It's going to create a vortex just like a tornado. So it's going to have a downdraft too. And that's why around the time of the downdraft, that's going to be super cold air being pulled down from above all the way around the Arctic Circle. It's basically going to give an instant winter, or what do they call that when it's like worldwide winter?
Well, I know of nuclear winter. You're talking about the grand solar minimum,
like a ice age. It's an ice age. So it's basically going to create a mini ice age around the North Pole, an ice ring around the North Pole, which is going to give us glaciers and stuff like that. And that's also the reason why those mammoths instantly froze all the way around the Arctic Circle. In Siberia and Alaska, they froze instantly with the food still in their mouth, with their young still behind them. They were in a tundra, in a warm climate, when all of a sudden that super cold air came down from above because of the plasma apocalypse and froze them instantly in place where they were around the Arctic Circle. That's the downdraft from that world tempest, basically. Your muscles have been exercised under these conditions, under this pressure, under this strong gravity pull, because it's the strongest right before the reset. So you're basically going to be a superhero going into the next world that has a weak gravitational pull. The children born into that world will be accustomed to the new gravitational pull and less pressure on the atmosphere and more oxygen, because there's going to be an influx of nitrous oxide and oxygen. So that's going to do two things. One, our bodies, those of us who survive, we're basically going to be super strong, right? And in turn, super fast and things like that, jump super high, all of those things. But our children, their bodies are going to start growing bigger and bigger and bigger to accommodate a world that has less pressure and more oxygen and other things, including an influx of plasma as well, which is basically life. So that means our children and the children and the byproduct of those who have sex with the Fantazoids that come in, they're going to get bigger and bigger, basically turning into giants and titans as the world goes on. Now, these conditions are they're going to get lessen over time, right? The electromagnetics of our world will strengthen, so gravity will get stronger and stronger and return to what it is today. The pressure will rebuild back up over time, so things will start to shrink back down over time as well. And let's see, I'm just checking my notes real quick. Oh, and then the debris, of course, the stuff that doesn't make it out. Oh, and there's also a good likelihood that the entire sky itself, not just the top of the world blowing open, but the sky will probably crack open as the world grows as well, which is going to happen to the moon as well. In Islam, they actually have an end of the world prophecy that during the end, close to their day of judgment or judgment day, that men will look up at the moon and the moon will split into two. And that has happened in the past, that has happened before. And we will literally watch as that image of the other world out there, the moon, cracks open in half, because we're watching their plasma apocalypse happen live. And in Islam, they say that people will see that and they won't believe it. They'll think it's magic. They'll think it's a show. They'll think it's not real and it's not really happening. But that's also portrayed prophetically, basically, through a lot of our movies and our entertainment. We've seen a lot of moon breaking in movies and video games and stuff. As King Ghidorah, right? That's the light of the world. That's Jacob's ladder, where all the Fantazoids are ascending and descending upon it. That is Jack's beanstalk that he climbs to go up and out of our world into the macrocosm where the giants live. That's the tree of life. That's also going to be the crucifix symbol. Even though biblically the word wasn't crucifix, it was staros, which means staff or pole. Okay. So that's the sign of Jesus, is the staff, this bluish white beam that shoots up out of the center of the world during the silent night, right? Because it's going to be in a vacuum because everything's getting sucked out. And then it's going to be super quiet because there's not going to be much around. So it's going to be a very silent night. But this light shoots up out of the center of the world. And that's the light that the wise men followed in order to get to where the Savior was born in a cave. And that's the cave of the Mount Meru at the center of our world, the magnetic mountain, or Rupus Negra. And that's basically sort of like a volcano-shaped island that's magnetic because of this event, because of that charge of plasma that rushes through it, right? It magnifies the entire mountain there. And that's why our compasses point north. That shoots up into our world. But when it does that, remember, that magnetic force field has already been reinstituted. So instead of the plasma being repelled on the outside of the world, it goes up, hits that magnetic dome or shield around our world, and begins to fill it with that oxygenated plasma and creates a byproduct of nitrous oxide and oxygen. A rush of oxygen comes into our world, way more oxygen for us, which is going to add to our faster healing abilities, our growth, and more things. But then pockets of nitrous oxide, which I think is hilarious because it's laughing gas, right? And that's why in the Black Hole Sun video, they always have these huge Joker faces, like these bigger than life smiles, because they are the ones who are being subject to the laughing gas, basically, of the world. Now, nitrous oxide, when taken in large doses, also has the byproduct of permanent amnesia. People will wake up not remembering where they are. Last thing they saw was a red flashy thingy in the sky, just like in Men in Black. Psh, flashy thingy, right? Look at it. People wake up. They don't know where they are. They're just on an island somewhere. They don't know who they are. They don't know who other people are. A lot of times they're not going to be able to remember their own families. So some people developed a tradition of writing on themselves, right? To remember certain things for when they woke up, which is where we get tattoos from. Let's see where else. Oh, so it is that huge light shining up out of the middle of the world. That's the Savior. That's the thing that comes into our world. That's the light of the world. That's the thing that signifies and adds life to our world, literally filling it up with all of the life's ingredients that we need. And it's going to continue to fill it up. Our world's going to be energetically charged with electromagnetic energy. It's going to be in flux with electromagnetics. This is where, for example, like sci-fi and Terminator movies and toys and all these inanimate objects coming to life. And this is also why, like, you see the blue beam that's usually associated with like UFOs sucking people up, right? That's where we get that from, is that's the blue beam and the people getting sucked up into the sky phenomenon. And we manifest that in a cartoonish kind of a way. Not that it doesn't exist in crafts, but exists on an ancient level in our mind, on a, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, an original sense in our collective memories, basically. It's J Dreamers. And also I just want to plug my website, jdreamers.com. If you go to jdreamers.com, there's a whole plasma apocalypse section. If you want to learn more about it, the elven race, the Titans, the giants, mud fossils, that's all there.